Well, so much for saving that bag, right? We have, oh, okay. It's stash busting time again. We're trying something a wee bit different this month, both in terms of content and kind of in terms of format, because I'm Future Mayor from 5 days into March after reviewing my footage during editing and realizing I should have been reshooting a few things. It's been a month, folks. February strikes again. Right off the bat, there will be some sewing content. I've been keeping the sewing and knitting separate, and I really need to stop doing that. I have multiple stashes which need busting, so there will be both. I'm just letting you know at the beginning because I know some of my sewing buddies steer clear of my monthly stash busting videos because they've been all about the knitting. I'd like to move towards making my channel more multicraftual, showing how all of these things just sort of work together. Now, I'd filmed the original intro at the beginning of the month right after the wrap-up from January, and I didn't know at the time that my microphone was out of power. The camera microphone barely picked up half of what I was saying, and the footage just sucked, so I'm taking a mulligan with footage stuck in from the original intro, because if I had the power to rewind time to show the state of my projects at the beginning of the month, I'd probably use that same power to change a whole buttload of things over the course of my personal timeline, and let's just say that it's for the best that I not have the ability to meddle with the space-time continuum. So when we left off at the end of January, I was actively working on a hand-spun toque for the Husbeast. The yarn is from about 2014, I think, so it's about 10 years, if not a little bit more, and the pattern is the Sockhead Slouch Hat by Kelly McClure. My secondary works in progress were the Step-by-Step sweater by Florence Miller in Karen Blossom Cakes, colorway Rose, and I also had a sock project tucked into my purse that was being studiously ignored because I wasn't all that enthralled by the colors. I love to knit socks, I was not loving knitting that sock. Speaking of things folks studiously ignore, please remember to boop the like button and subscribe if you aren't already. Many thanks to my supporters, channel members, and Patreon members, because I couldn't do any of this without all of you. So what I'm going to do now is return you to Mayor of the poor quality sound for the opening of the monthly mystery project. If you're new to the channel and don't know what that is, I definitely invite you to check out the Stash Busting playlist, which will probably be up here someplace. A couple of months ago, December of 2025, I set aside the materials for 12 yarn or fiber projects to be opened at the beginning of every month. I sealed them up in plastic zip bags to protect them against anything that might be lurking here in the basement, like me, and cats, and anything else that might be down here. And then I stuffed those into paper lunch sacks to anonymize them as much as possible. And then I put those bags full of stuff into a grocery box, and I pretty well forget about them until it's the beginning of the month and time to choose another bag at random. So let's go choose a bag at random, and I'll meet you back here at the end of the month. Deal? I don't know what any of these things are. That feels like a single scale. So we'll see what this is. Well, so much for saving that bag, right? We have, oh, okay. This is a beautiful silky merino single in the colorway Narwhal by, I think it's pronounced Qing Fiber, Qing, hand dyed in the UK. Qing Silky Merino Singles Narwhal, and that's some gorgeous yarn. That's going to be fantastic. So that's not going to be socks. That's looking like, I'm not sure what this is going to be. It could be a scarf or a shawl. Those are the two things I'm thinking about right off the top of my head, just because it is a rather fine single ply. I have to think about this. Good thing I've got a toque to finish off. So I think I'm gonna go do that. I'm going to have to get this wound up and started for my monthly project. See if I can find a place to bolt this thing on. Problem with my workroom right now is that all of the surfaces seem to have stuff on them, so the table that I use for cutting out my fabric also has a cardboard pad as well as some plastic over top of it in case I have to trace something out with marker, and that makes it really difficult for me to bolt any of these things onto it because they just want to pop right off. And then this tabletop, really nice, however, some of the surfaces are fairly shallow, so getting a good grip using my yarn winder is not guaranteed. Over here, nope, I know what we can do. Pull that out. Pulling out the little shelf. Might work better if I bolt it onto the other side. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes. So one of the things that I do need to do now that I'm doing more of my knitting is actually need to organize things a little bit better in here. Project that I definitely want to get done. Perfect. We'll see how this works. Now the trouble here is that this yarn, the Qing yarn, Qing Fiber, in colorway Narwhal, it's a little odd. I've seen pictures of it knit up, and more than anything, I've seen people making it into a part of a sweater or knitting it with other Qing Fiber yarns in different colorways, doing, I think it's called a fade. Unfortunately, that whole fad just totally passed me by. I was working on sewing when everybody else was knitting fades. Hey, stop it. This is not for you. When you have to turn the Swift a few times to get the cat to leave the things alone. So, what I'm going to do, I've got a pattern or a bunch of patterns for boomerang shawls, and I think what I'm going to try doing is making a boomerang shawl out of it, and we'll see whether or not this actually suits me better or whether it suits one of the other people in the family better. If that's the case, it'll go into the Christmas present pile. Otherwise, we'll see what this turns into, because the yarn's gorgeous. So today is what I'm calling a sew for yourself day. In other words, it's not something specifically for the channel. I do have a project that I will be making specifically for the channel a little bit later this week, but today I'm working on Tumalo Mark II. In January, I made the first Tumalo jumpsuit, and it turned out to be just a little too big all over, but it had a bunch of problems, particularly with stretch and the size of the legs. So I've gone back to the pattern, I've made some adjustments,
There's a couple of places where I've brought it in by a couple of sizes. I've redone the legs down to more of a taper, and we'll see how that goes. If I have to bring it in even more, I will. But I used my usual pair of around the house pants. It has a bit of a template to find out how wide they usually are, and try to use that as a bit of a guide as to where to start tapering things in on the legs of the jumpsuit. So we'll see how that goes, because last year I had a slip and fall accident from the bottom stair. I slipped on a bottom stair and went arse over tea kettle, and I still have a little bit of PTSD from it. I get near a flight of stairs and immediately think, how am I going to fall down these stairs? So I'd rather not have the super wide legs that I can trip on, and instead bring them in so that things are a little easier to maneuver around with. But that said, it's not something that I wanted to necessarily do on camera. I didn't figure that you guys needed to see me doing all of the steps as to what I was doing. Just this is for my own sort of fun and wardrobe and having things to wear while I'm doing things. The fabric is quite a bit different. It's still a knit, but it has just a little bit more structure to it. So plenty of give width-wise, but on the grain, less. Which is important. It means that things aren't going to be drooping more than they really need to, so to speak. At any rate, that's my project for today. Put that over there in case I need to run off a couple of test stitches. Aside from that, it's been a little while since I've checked in with you, and I thought that I would. I have a mystery project I need to get done, and the mystery project I decided would be Fractal Danger by Martina Behm. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, so my apologies if I'm mispronouncing it. She's the person who came up with the hitchhiker scarf, and the Fractal Danger is very similar in that you start with a tiny little bit and it becomes bigger. It also then narrows down, and the colorway in the Qing Fiber yarn that I pulled out of the bag this month was a little difficult to figure out what I wanted to make with it, because I couldn't really find anything that was delicate and floaty, because it's made out of merino, and it's got a very definite defined look to the one ply yarn. Like it's just one ply. It's not barber pole. It's not 3 plies. It's just one single ply. So it looks like a long noodle, and because it's merino, it's kind of shiny. And so socks were out because it's not strong enough for socks. A scarf or a shawl would be best, but finding something that wouldn't look too overwhelmed by the colors, or wouldn't look just like one noodle being knit into a shape, makes it a little bit more difficult. So I finally settled on Fractal Danger, and most of the work that I've done so far I got done on Sunday because I had set a little bit of time aside for myself to just knit. And for the past few days I've been sort of working away at getting that first half of the scarf done. So I'm almost there. I'm most of the way through that first half, and we'll see how the second half goes. I figure that once I've got the dress made for this month's video, then I can concentrate more fully just on the scarf. At any rate, I'm going to get back to work on this, because if I can get it done today, whether or not the kittens are out in the sunroom, I think it's about 6 degrees out there, so they're good for a little while, but not too long, otherwise they become a catsicle. get back to work on this so that I can have a new jumpsuit for this weekend. Last weekend was a bit of stash enhancement because people have birthdays, and when you have birthdays, you can buy yarn and fabric. I know that I've devoted a good portion of this year to stashing down, and I'm trying to do that not only with my yarn stash, which is over here, but also my fabric stash, which is in bins in the other section of the basement. And the reasoning for that is not necessarily to try and get rid of all of it. It's so that I actually use it and enjoy using it while I can use it. Having gone through a lot of my mom's stuff, I've seen a lot of the things that she either put away that she was going to get around to someday or just was keeping for whatever reason. And I'm getting to a point where I need to either use things or release them. So rather than just releasing everything and then having to start all over again, I'm actually trying to enjoy the stuff that I've got. So there are going to be times when, yes, I do go to a fabric store and accidentally pick up a few things, or go to the yarn store because it's a birthday or some other kind of special occasion, like going to a yarn store with a friend or traveling or something along those lines, and picking up a couple of skeins of something because it's there. So last Friday, I went to the fabric store with Ashley, and I actually picked up the stuff that is going to be my dress for this month. Did decide to do a dress, and we saw the perfect fabric. I had been thinking of something from the stash, but the two of us saw this fabric, looked at each other, and went, ooh, that would be really cute and right up your alley. So I picked it up. And I also picked up the fabric for a corset / set of stays, sort of a Ren Fair bodice that will go kind of with it. So that's going to be on the project books for this month. I just need to get around to it, and I needed a couple of days to sort of relax after making Tumalo Jumpsuit Part 1. I came home from that excursion not only with the dress fabric and corset fabric for this month, but also 2 t-shirts and a summer blouse. Some assembly required. That's the catchphrase that I'm going with. Some assembly required. Now, of course, Fabricland's clearance section is going through all the things that didn't get sold in fall and winter. So I came back with a Halloween print of spider webs that say Happy Halloween. And because it's black and white, that thing's going to get worn all year round. So that's going to be a very fun top to wear. There's also a sort of crushed velvet type of knit that has like a tapestry print on it that I think would look absolutely fabulous, either as a cashmerette Carlisle or Grafton, whichever. I actually need to take a look at both of those patterns together and see where they differ, aside from the neckline. Because if it's just really the neckline, then woohoo, I'm good to go. The Carlisle has more poofy sleeves and a square neck. The Grafton can be done either relaxed, so a little bit more loose fitting with a dolman sleeve, I do believe, or more fitted with a set-in sleeve. And I do like the set-in sleeves. The Carlisle is just a little too poofy, and sometimes, and I know this because I made the t-shirt with this fabric as a Carlisle, can also get a little sloppy in the neck if you're not careful. Definitely need to have bra strap stays in order to keep the Carlisle in place. It's kind of a, if you're making a Carlisle, and the Carlisle looks good when you've got it in the right fabric at the right size, you're going to need to have stays to make sure that your shoulder's not drooping off your shoulder. That the shoulder of the shirt isn't drooping off your shoulder. So yeah, I've got a few things that I can make in that aspect that wouldn't necessarily make a great video for the channel, I don't think, because it's just using the same pattern over and over again, right? It's like at some point I plan on revisiting the falconer pants because I think I've figured out what I'm doing trying to enlarge it for my tummy. Because that's mostly where the problem was. It wasn't necessarily my hips when I think about it. It was actually the area over my tummy. And now that I have a better idea of how to do a full tummy adjustment, making the falconers is going to probably go a lot easier. So it might be something that I do a video on the whole about, of revisiting the patterns that you use. But we'll see. We'll see. I also bought some yarn on Saturday because we were getting together with friends to do a little bit of yarn shopping and then go for dinner because that was the birthday celebration. And I wound up coming home with 2 skeins of Polka Dot Creek self-striping. So basically they're a self-striping sock set. One in the colorway Calgary and one in the colorway, I think it's Valentine Candy, something like that. One of them is a little bit more muted. That was one that the Husbeast chose. And one of them is a little bit more bright and candy colored, and that's the one that I chose. I also went to Ancient Arts Dye Works, Ancient Arts Studio. A friend of mine who was with us, who is getting back into knitting with color after going through a gray phase. They had been really big into the neutral gray and nothing but gray. And I've joked that I started to sound like my mother in how much I wanted them to start using color again because they look really good in color. They found an actually really nice colorful yarn and decided they wanted to make a Sophie hood. And I've got the pattern, so I said, okay, sure, no problem. And they said, let's do it together. And unfortunately, I had already just started casting on for this month's mystery project. So I picked up 3 skeins of Ametrine in, I think it's DK Light Worsted. And we'll see how that goes. I may have to go back for another skein of the Ametrine if I run out. Who knows? But at any rate, it's going to be a cute, colorful hood. No matter what anybody thinks of petite knit and the Sophie phenomenon. I still get a kick out of that. It's just backed us with more development, I guess. So yeah, I enhanced my stash just a little bit and not too worried about it.
The last time we chatted, I think it was about 10 to 15 degrees Celsius outside, and now it is down around minus 18, from minus 21 when I came in from taking the Husbeast to work. So yeah, it got cold real quick, and we got lots of snow. A lot of snow. It took me over an hour to clear the driveway yesterday, and so I spent the rest of the day working on the scarf because I was recovering on the sofa. So here we go, and this is probably going to look a whole lot better when it's blocked. If you see me looking over there, it's because I'm making sure that everything is in frame. I got the first section done, and I'm on to the second section, which I think starts around here. It's a bit of a change of direction, creates a little bit of a wedge. And you do a series of decreases along the top past the marker, and I'm almost done. Yeah, that's where I am. I'm almost finished the wedge, and then it's on to the last section. I'm about halfway or just over through the ball, which is cool. Maybe 2/3, not sure. And I'm really liking the colors together.
I thought at first that the single strand of yarn would look a little weird. Like it's not, as I said, it's not plied. But it's looking really good, and I think once it's blocked, it's going to really pop. I'm thinking it might work well for one of my nibblings. One of them has red hair, so would work really well with the green, and the other one is a blonde, which would work well with the purples. So whichever one winds up with it, I think that might make a good Christmas present. Gotta be careful not to get things into the zipper. I need to make more project bags, or I guess as the kids are calling them nowadays, analog bags. I called them a purse. This whole analog bag thing seems really wacky. It's not an analog bag, it's a purse. You put your project in your purse, and that way when you go out someplace and you have to stand in line, you take out your knitting, and yeah. Analog bag. I would hope that most bags and purses that you carry would be analog. Man, I'm old. Anyhow, what have I been doing over the past couple of days other than knitting? I've been putting together patterns because I have to get this month's garment made. And I was planning to make a corset this month, and there will be a corset. I just had to draft the pattern. And I'm trying to figure out whether or not I'm going to explain how I did that and how. Because, yeah, doing the whole top-down, draw everything out a la Closet Historian really isn't my style. So we'll see how that goes. But I've got my pattern already cut out. I just need to cut out the fabric and start the actual sewing of what's going to go under the corset. And then I need to put some seam allowance onto the corset pattern and get it cut out and done. Mostly I need to dig out boning, and that's going to require me moving a sofa. So yeah, that might take a little bit of effort and time, and I really don't feel up to moving a sofa right now. Some people don't particularly like Mondays. I have issues with February. It's the shortest month of the year, and yet it likes to drag itself out as long as possible. So let's get February in the can so we can get on to March, shall we? Let's look at the things that I finished. And as you can see, I finished the hat. The husbeast was nice enough to leave it at home the past couple of days so I could live out all of my cute middle-aged hipster dreams on camera. My friends, this hat is really warm. I was shooting reveal footage yesterday and I was overheating. 12 out of 10 for style, comfort, and warmth. And yes, I know the hat looks good on me. No, I'm not stealing it from the husbeast. I have one of my own that I knit years ago, so I'm all set for slouchy hipster hats. I'm good. At least for now. The Tumalo jumpsuit is still too big. The crotch is still too low. Thankfully, I used a slightly different construction the second time around, so it should be easier to disassemble and alter the bottom half. I'm not looking forward to all the seam ripping because going down a couple of sizes in the bottom means having to recut the pockets. Yay. The shirt from the same fabric, though? Almost perfection. I just need to redo the bra strap stays. The shirt's been fitting a little sloppily, and when I compared it to the almost perfect fitting blue floral version, I realized I'd done the strap stays differently, so that's an easy fix. And this hat is falling off my head, so I'm just going to pull it off. I did have some issues with warped fabric in both the jumpsuit and the shirt, and I figured out that this is from easing the pieces together. Apparently, I stretched the pieces a little too much and that warped things. I'll hopefully remember that for the next time. I finished precisely half of the planned sewing project for this month, and I'm going to talk about that for a moment because there's a paradigm in the YouTube makerspace that just sort of drives me up the wall. It's the paradigm that says, if you can make it one video, make one video dedicated to that specific subject. And that works really well when it's Johnny Harris talking about why the milkshake and ice cream machines at McDonald's are always broken. It doesn't always work so well for I made a thing sewing and knitting videos that might cover work over the span of multiple months. Some folks are really great with their project management and can schedule things to finish up so they have something new every week.
I am not that organized. And I don't want to trick somebody into thinking that a sweater for a plus-size body only takes a week or two to make. We're having some pretty difficult conversations with pattern designers in this relatively new world of slow, fast fashion about size inclusivity and their pattern testing policies. They can try to put out patterns at the same operational speed as a fast fashion design house. It really does make me miss the days when you knew that if you were submitting a pattern to something like Knitty or Interweave, which at the time were the places for new pattern designers to get exposure and seen, it would take months of work. A lot of designers want a couple of weeks turnaround for a yoke and a single sleeve, as they figure that's all they need to test fit on a plus-size person. So I wind up feeling like I have to be coy about the things I'm working on, to not spoil the surprise, or to find a way to stuff everything into one video so that there's a satisfying ending. And life, my friends, does not come with a lot of satisfying endings. It's why TV shows have cliffhangers. Knowing that sewing is one of my weak points, my plans for the year gave me the ability to restrict myself to one single on-camera sewn garment per month, and that went entirely out the window in February. The sewing project I'd planned for this month was a corset, but my heart really wasn't into it because I'm still dealing with body image after the holidays and didn't want to have to draft the pattern. And once the pattern was drafted, try to explain it. So I decided to concentrate on a dress to go under the corset. Despite my frustrations, there will be a video dedicated to that whole kerfuffle. As it stands right now, though, I think I'm going to push the video back a bit, so I'm a bit happier with the outcome. But that meant that I was working furiously to try and get something done, only to not get a video out. Like, halfway through that whole debacle, I just sort of said screw it and made a pair of pants. And, well, it's a wearable toile, I guess. I think I have a couple of fit issues that need to be sorted out, but if you're wondering, the lane pants are a pretty good pattern for anyone trying to ease into sewing trousers. Bonus points if you like cargo pants. They're also pretty easy to taper in if you don't want super wide legs. I tapered them into a size 16 below the set-in pockets, which looks not too bad and doesn't give me a lot of trouble going up and down stairs. I'm just not sure that I like the amount of excess fabric near the crotch, and I may need to do a little adjustment for a bit of room at the bum, though when I was doing the reveal footage, they seemed to fit really well. So I could see them being really comfy if I used a fabric with just a touch more stretch than the old top sheet that I pressed in the surface. The upshot of all of this is that I'm taking the next month off from any kind of planned sewing. Maybe get the outstanding project wrapped up, but I'm not going to insist on it, and otherwise just go by the seat of my pants and make things as the whim strikes. I've been wanting to make a second attempt at the oxbow pants, which fit me really well, except in a couple of places, and I could use a couple more t-shirts. I'll probably just film enough of the sewing process to indicate that I sewed them together myself. Don't expect any kind of in-depth, granular step-by-step footage. I'd also like a couple more project bags. We'll see if these are things that get made. Related to the project bags, the whole analog bag trend just sort of came out of left field, and it boggles my mind. Despite how it may have sounded in my footage from earlier this month, I don't have anything against it. I've personally been packing my purse like it's carry-on luggage for a toddler since my early to mid-20s. When I was in college, I liked to keep my Walkman and a book with me, mostly because I'd be traveling alone on the Toronto transit system and I didn't want anyone bothering me. Or I'd be waiting in a cafe between classes, or while waiting for the machines at the laundromat. Having something to keep myself occupied has always been a priority. And the more I think about it, it feels like a coping mechanism I built into my life to help give me a way to focus on something small and achievable. As I've gotten older, my Walkman and book have mostly been replaced by my phone and small handcrafts like knitting, crochet, tatting, because when I'm out of the house, it's usually to do things with other people. I can usually get away with knitting and such while I chat or listen, since zoning out with your electronics or reading a book at people is generally considered rude. And because I'm the person in the family who drives, I'll listen to an audiobook when I'm alone in the car, though I've recently dusted off and powered up my old Kobo, and we're considering updating to one of the newer versions, which will be nice, because they now have color, which would mean less need to use the book apps, yes, plural, on my iPad for crafting books. So the concept of a bag with analog stuff to keep me occupied isn't new, I just call it a purse. And now with trying to put more emphasis on my knitting and working from stash, I do need more project bags, so that will probably go on the list of possible projects for the next couple of months. Did I work on the purse sock at all this month? No. Even when I had the opportunity to reach for an easy project like a sock, even though I'm kind of itching to knit a sock, I haven't gone for this project. And that tells me it's not talking to me. And you can tell that I've kind of made up my mind about it because the needles are no longer in it. So I'm going to set it aside for now and come back to it later because I do have the means to turn this yarn into a sock fairly quickly. 3D printed circular sock machine, yay. And I'd like to finally get around to trying that in March. Something to look forward to because you know I've been talking about it, but I've never unpacked it. The dark horse of the month has been the pink step-by-step sweater. She has grown. Look at this. So a bit of a background. I've mentioned that the Husbeast and I video game with another couple, and we've been doing a kind of, you could say it's a cultural exchange. They're into Baldur's Gate 3. The Husbeast and I are into Final Fantasy 14. Baldur's Gate 3 has been on a bit of a hold while we help the other couple get through 14. So yes, I play Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't gotten very far in the story, and I'm playing a wood elf druid who has not only yeeted her bestie into lava, quite by accident, I'll let you know, but also sassed that bestie's romantic favorite to the point where he's not returning their romantic overtures. It's a learning process, and I'm thankful that my friends have a fantastic sense of humor, well, fantastic senses of humor, because apparently I'm really good at following up injury with insult. Final Fantasy XIV, on the other hand, is less a video game and more an interactive movie where you play the main character. So, for the main story quest line, or MSQ as it's known, the combat is heavily offset by cinematic cutscenes featuring your character. There's a lot of cutscenes and cinematics, and the first mindless knitting project I reached for while watching them was the sweater. Hello, kitten. No, you can't eat my yarn. Because I'm on the body of the sweater and it's just stockinette, kind of mindless knitting. The one drawback to working on the sweater is that it's getting kind of hard to juggle as it gets bigger, particularly with one cat who wants to be packed into her baby snuggie while I play, and this one who believes all yarn should be destroyed. The last few nights have seen her attack and snap my yarn at least twice, which is pretty impressive considering it's, acrylic chain yarn. Kind of like knitting with a soft, thin, already knit tube yarn. I do have a few ends that need weaving in, but might be better for sofa knitting once I've finished the scarf. And if the mystery project is socks, so much the better. They're smaller and easier to move around, and thus easier to maneuver around Cat the first and keep away from Cat the second. I did not mention the scarf. I am about 2/3 of the way done, almost. I'm not all that much farther along than I was at the last update that I did, but it is coming along, and I probably just need a couple of days of sitting and watching TV, maybe a couple of movies, and I should be good to go on this. So it's coming along and probably won't take very long. As mentioned, there was stash enhancement. Am I still focused on stash busting? Yes, but I'm not in a mad dash to use everything up as soon as possible. I just want to give myself permission to make things and use the materials I already have instead of hoarding them and buying new. There will possibly be more stash enhancement in April because the Ujama Grandma's thrift sale will be going on and my friend Ashley Main and I are thinking of going. If I go, there will be purchases. I'm just trying to be a realist. But that's in April. First we have to get through March. So the final total's at the end of February. Scarf is 2/3 of the way done. Progress on the sweater, and socks to be determined. I finished a hat, a shirt, a jumpsuit, a dress, and a pair of pants. Can you believe I got to the end of February thinking I didn't get anything done? Because I did. Mostly because a few things were made with the camera off. It's only after tallying it up that I realized I did a lot. Additions were 2 self-striping sock sets and 2 skeins of DK weight yarn, miscellaneous fabric for the spring and summer wardrobe. So this month there was more coming in than going out, and that's okay. These things will get used. I think it might have been because I hadn't stepped foot in Fabricland since sometime in September, and I was a little overstimulated by all the neat stuff that I could get at 60% off. If you're still here, thanks for spending time with me and sticking around till the end, and I will see you again soon. No spoilers, but because I'm Mayor from the future, I already know what the March Mystery Project is, and you'll want to come back for that one.